The tension in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room was palpable as Jonathan Roumie sat across from Jacek Kurski. The 27-year-old actor, known for his commanding performances, had entered the room with full confidence, ready to challenge the media mogul's record on political manipulation. Roumie, a strong advocate for truth in media and public discourse, thought he had prepared the perfect strategy to expose Kurski's bias and misuse of media influence. What happened next would become a viral moment in political and media history. Roumie, calm and composed, listened as Kurski launched into what he believed would be a scathing critique of the actor's outspoken stance on media ethics. The packed room fell silent as Kurski confidently cited media policies and cases he claimed proved Roumie's naivety in understanding media power. But there was just one problem. The examples Kurski was quoting didn't exist. Roumie was about to expose this in the most professional, yet brutal way possible. The moment Roumie opened his mouth to respond, everyone in that room knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. This wasn't just a media clash. It was about to become a masterclass in truth and integrity, one that would dismantle Kurski's credibility and create a viral moment that would define their careers. The stakes couldn't have been higher. In the front row sat prominent media experts from Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown, their expressions already showing concern as they failed to recognize the references Kurski was citing. Political reporters from every major news network were frantically fact-checking on their phones, their confusion growing by the minute. The C-SPAN cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the confrontation live to millions of viewers who had tuned in expecting typical media drama, but were about to witness something far more significant. What made this moment particularly explosive was the timing. Just weeks earlier, Kurski had appeared on multiple news shows, claiming that actors and public figures with no media background were out of touch with how media truly works and needed to be held accountable by people like him. He had built his entire brand on the idea that experience and background in media were less important than control and influence over public narratives. Now he was about to discover that when it comes to media ethics and truth, there truly is no substitute for transparency and integrity. At just 27 years old, Roumie had already made a name for himself as one of the most vocal figures in advocating for ethical media practices. Born and raised in New York, he had worked his way up from humble beginnings to become an internationally recognized actor and outspoken advocate for truth in public discourse. His rise was built on his commitment to taking on media giants, regardless of their power or influence. Roumie's background was rooted in acting and public advocacy, not media manipulation. He had studied communications and acting, spending his early career in theater and later transitioning into film, where he crafted performances that resonated deeply with audiences. Known for his fearless approach to standing up for truth and justice, Roumie's strength was in confronting powerful figures in a way that challenged the status quo. What many people didn't know was that Roumie had spent weeks preparing for this confrontation, working with a team of researchers dedicated to exposing the manipulations in the media industry. They had developed what they believed was a foolproof strategy: present misleading quotes and media case studies quickly and confidently, assuming that the formal setting would prevent immediate fact-checking and that any pushback would seem defensive rather than authoritative. Roumie's team believed this aggressive approach would expose Kurski's deep-seated manipulations and contradictions. Roumie had already gained significant attention for his confrontations with powerful media figures. His social media presence was growing rapidly, with millions of followers hanging on his every word as he dismantled the false narratives perpetuated by those in charge of mainstream media. His position as a media watchdog had earned him praise from critics of media monopolies, while his critics claimed he was attacking the institutions of power without understanding how media works. Sitting across from Roumie was Jacek Kurski, a media mogul with credentials that few could match. Having built a media empire in Poland, Kurski had spent decades shaping the narratives that drove the country's political landscape. His ability to manipulate public opinion through media outlets was legendary. However, Roumie wasn't here to debate or defend the status quo. He was here to expose the cracks in the system that Kurski had long taken for granted. Unlike Roumie, whose authority came from his integrity and commitment to truth, Kurski's authority came from his decades of media manipulation. His influence in the media had shaped political debates and public discourse for years. And today, he was about to be taken down by someone who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. This confrontation represented the clash between public truth and media manipulation. between a genuine advocate for transparency and someone who had made a career out of controlling public narratives. For Roumie, this was an opportunity to further solidify his reputation as a fearless fighter for ethical standards in media. A strong performance here could elevate his profile even further and position him as the new voice of accountability in the media world. But for Kurski, this was an opportunity to hold on to his influence, using the same media tactics he had always relied upon. He believed that by controlling the narrative and leveraging his media reach, he could easily shut down any opposition, especially someone like Roumie, who didn't have the experience or resources to compete on his level. As the hearing continued, the tension in the room grew. Roumie had carefully prepared his counter-arguments, knowing the stakes were high. He was ready to expose Kurski's manipulation of the truth and provide a lesson in media ethics that would leave Kurski's credibility in ruins. The room was about to witness a clash that would redefine what it meant to challenge the media in the digital age. The tension in the room was palpable as Jonathan Roumie sat across from Jacek Kurski during the highly anticipated media showdown. Roumie, known for his vocal stance on media ethics, had entered the room with determination, ready to challenge Kurski's long-standing manipulation of public opinion through the media. Roumie thought he had meticulously crafted the perfect moment to expose Kurski's media empire for its biases. But what was about to unfold would become one of the most consequential media fact-checks in recent political history. Roumie, calm and composed, listened as Kurski launched into his critique of Roumie's public positions, claiming that his outspoken media activism had no solid foundation. Kurski, confident in his media prowess, began citing sources and cases he believed proved Roumie's missteps. The packed room fell silent as Kurski went on, presenting himself as the voice of reason and authority in the media world. But there was just one problem. The cases Kurski was quoting didn't exist, and Roumie was about to expose this ignorance with precision. When Roumie finally spoke, everyone in the room knew they were about to witness something monumental. This wasn't just a media argument. It was going to be a masterclass in fact-checking that would dismantle Kurski's credibility and create a viral moment that would reverberate across the globe. The stakes couldn't have been higher. In the front row sat some of the most respected media critics from around the world, already puzzled as they failed to recognize the references Kurski was making. Political reporters were frantically fact-checking on their phones, their confusion growing by the minute. The cameras rolled as the exchange was broadcast live to millions. But what Kurski thought was an easy takedown of Roumie would soon unravel. The confrontation was particularly charged because just weeks earlier, Kurski had appeared on multiple news channels, positioning himself as the guardian of media integrity, criticizing what he called celebrities playing politics, without understanding the full scope of media influence. He had built his entire career around the idea that experience and power in the media world made him the rightful authority. Now, he was about to discover that when it comes to truth in media, there is no substitute for transparency and factual accuracy. At just 27 years old, Jonathan Roumie had already made a name for himself as a force for good in the media world, advocating for ethical standards and cleaning out manipulation. Born and raised in New York, Roumie had built his career in theater and film, and his powerful voice in media ethics resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. His rise had been fueled by a commitment to uncover the truth behind the headlines, and he had never been afraid to challenge the media moguls who profited from spreading misinformation. What many didn't know was that Roumie had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with a team of media researchers who had uncovered inconsistencies in Kurski's media empire. They had developed what they thought was an unassailable strategy: present fabricated sources and narratives quickly, before anyone could fact-check, believing the formal setting would give Kurski the upper hand. They believed that Roumie, a public figure with no media empire to his name, would be unable to withstand Kurski's media manipulations. But Roumie wasn't just an actor. He was someone who had been involved in shaping stories for years. His background wasn't in media manipulation, but in understanding the power of truth. Roumie was well aware of the games Kurski had played in the media, and this was his chance to expose them. Sitting across from Roumie was Jacek Kurski, a man with a long-standing reputation in the media world for controlling narratives and shaping public opinion. But his empire of influence was about to meet a force that he couldn't manipulate, someone who understood both the power of media and the importance of truth. Unlike Roumie, whose expertise came from years of advocating for transparency, Kurski's authority came from his ability to twist and control narratives to fit his political agenda. His influence in Poland's media landscape was undeniable, but Roumie wasn't here to debate that power. He was here to dismantle the falsehoods Kurski had been spreading. This was a classic clash between truth and media manipulation. For Roumie, it was an opportunity to solidify his position as a defender of truth in an industry known for sensationalism. For Kurski, it was another attempt to maintain his hold over public opinion through his media empire. He thought his experience and connections would give him the upper hand, but Roumie was about to prove him wrong. As the hearing unfolded, Roumie's quiet determination was clear. He had spent hours going over Kurski's media tactics, preparing himself for this precise moment. The confrontation was escalating, and Roumie was about to expose the web of lies Kurski had woven throughout his media career. Jonathan Roumie, with years of dedication to truth and public discourse, stood prepared to face Jacek Kurski, whose manipulations of the media would soon be torn apart. What had started as an expected media argument would quickly evolve into a showcase of how truth could combat media manipulation when it was wielded with precision, passion, and undeniable evidence. Roumie had one goal in mind: to challenge Kurski's fabricated narrative and remind the public of the importance of transparency and accuracy in media. What came next would reshape public discourse and remind everyone that, no matter how powerful someone is in the media, truth remains the most powerful tool at our disposal. The room fell silent as Jonathan Roumie, actor and advocate for truth in media, leaned forward. His voice, calm but firm, carried the weight of someone who had dedicated his life to exposing the flaws in media manipulation. The stakes of this confrontation were higher than anyone had expected. Jacek Kurski, known for his tight grip over Poland's media, had just launched into a series of claims that Roumie's critiques of the media industry were based on false information. Roumie adjusted his glasses and then addressed Kurski with a quiet authority that caused the audience to lean in. "Mr. Kurski," Roumie began, "I appreciate your position on media influence, but I'm afraid there are some critical factual inaccuracies in your argument that I feel obligated to address." His tone was measured, professional, and yet there was an undertone of steel that made everyone in the room understand something significant was about to happen. "Let's begin with the claim you made about the role of independent journalism in fostering a healthy democratic system," Roumie continued. "You argued that free press can often mislead the public, but the example you provided does not exist in any factual database. I have been involved in media reform for over a decade, and I can assure you I have never encountered the case you referenced." Kurski's confident expression faltered. He quickly shuffled through his papers, attempting to find a citation that would salvage the situation. Roumie's calm gaze never wavered, his voice growing stronger as he methodically dismantled each of Kurski's fabricated references. "More importantly, Mr. Kurski," Roumie continued, "the case you cited appears not to exist in any legitimate journalistic record. I had my team conduct a comprehensive search during your presentation. This case doesn't exist in any credible media outlet or publication database." The room collectively gasped as the weight of Roumie's words sank in. Journalists and media professionals in the room were frantically checking their phones, but the truth was clear. Kurski's sources were fabricated. Roumie wasn't finished. "Perhaps most troubling, Mr. Kurski, is your claim that media ownership regulations are guidelines rather than strict policies when it comes to ethical journalism. Your argument on media ownership consolidation presents a dangerous view that undermines the very principles of free speech and diversity in media. This is a stance that has been repeatedly debunked by industry standards." Kurski's face grew pale as Roumie's calm, authoritative response exposed the holes in his arguments. Roumie continued, addressing not just the errors, but the broader implications of what had happened. "The idea that constitutional protections in media law are mere suggestions is not just incorrect, it's a dangerous misunderstanding that, if allowed to stand, would further erode public trust in independent journalism." Roumie took a deep breath and then delivered the final blow. "You've presented this committee with what appears to be a series of fabricated claims with no basis in legitimate media precedent or law. In an era where truth is often sacrificed for political gain, this kind of misinformation undermines everything the media is supposed to stand for." The room erupted into whispered conversations as the magnitude of the situation hit. This wasn't just a disagreement about media ethics. It was the exposure of complete falsehoods being presented as fact. Roumie's voice took on a tone of grave concern as he addressed not only Kurski, but also the broader implications of what had occurred. I understand that media debates often involve passionate disagreements, Roumie said. Woof, Samayim, his voice softening slightly. But what we cannot accept is the deliberate fabrication of information to score political points. When public figures make false claims about the media, they not only harm public trust, they undermine the very foundation of democracy itself. Roumie paused, taking a moment to let the weight of his words settle in. Ethical journalism is complex, and while reasonable people can disagree on how to interpret certain issues, those disagreements must be based on factual accuracy, not fictional narratives created for political theater. Roumie, his composure still intact, looked directly at Kurski. Mr. Kurski, I've dedicated my entire career to upholding the truth. The responsibility of journalists and media figures is to present accurate, factual information to the public. To have the truth so fundamentally misrepresented for the sake of political theater is not just an attack on me, it's an attack on the integrity of the media and its role in society. The room fell into stunned silence as Kurski's arguments were completely dismantled. Roumie's careful and systematic fact-checking had exposed the lies Kurski had been relying on, leaving the media mogul with no defense against the truth. The lesson was clear. When the truth is wielded with authority and expertise, it cannot be silenced by media manipulation. The room fell into a heavy silence as Jonathan Roumie, known for his advocacy for transparency in the media, sat across from Jacek Kurski. The 27-year-old actor, who had made waves as a defender of media integrity, had entered the room with poise and certainty, ready to challenge Kurski's long-standing manipulation of public narratives. Roumie believed he had prepared the perfect strategy to expose Kurski's manipulation, but what was about to unfold would become a viral moment in media history. Roumie, calm and composed, listened intently as Kurski launched into a series of accusations, claiming that Roumie's critiques of the media industry were based on misinformation and misunderstanding. Kurski confidently cited various media cases and reports, trying to paint Roumie as naive and misinformed. The room, filled with media professionals and political figures, fell silent as Kurski made his case. But there was just one problem. The sources Kurski referenced didn't exist, and Roumie was about to expose this glaring error with precision. Roumie adjusted his glasses, took a deep breath, and then addressed Kurski in a voice that carried the authority of someone who had spent years fighting for truth. Mr. Kurski, Roumie began, I appreciate your concern for media integrity, but I'm afraid there are some serious factual inaccuracies in your argument that I must address. His tone was calm, yet firm, and it became immediately clear that something significant was about to unfold. I've spent countless hours researching media practices, writing critiques of misleading narratives, and ensuring that every statement I make is grounded in factual accuracy, Roumie continued. To have my arguments so fundamentally misrepresented with fabricated sources is not just an attack on me personally, it's an attack on the integrity of the media itself. Roumie's voice carried a note of personal pain as he added, what we cannot accept is the deliberate creation of false information to further political or media agendas. The public deserves nothing less than honesty in discussions about media power and influence. The room sat in stunned silence as Roumie began to systematically dismantle each of Kurski's claims. Let's begin with the case you mentioned, the Anderson report on media bias, which you claim I authored a critique on, Roumie said. I have never written or commented on such a report because it simply does not exist. I've spent years studying media dynamics, and I assure you, I have never come across this report. Kurski's face began to pale as he quickly shuffled through his notes, attempting to find a way to salvage his argument. And more importantly, Mr. Kurski, Roumie continued, this case does not exist in any legitimate media database. My team conducted a thorough search during your presentation, and there is no record of it anywhere. A collective gasp went through the room. Legal reporters, political operatives, and media analysts quickly began fact-checking on their phones, confirming that Roumie was right. Kurski's claims were fabricated. Roumie wasn't finished. Now, regarding your claim that media monopolies are protected by law, he said, pausing for dramatic effect. This is also incorrect. The research you referenced, the 2012 Media Protection Act, does not exist. And the quote you attributed to me about media consolidation being necessary for democratic stability is not a belief I've ever expressed. Kurski fumbled with his papers, clearly realizing that his argument was rapidly falling apart. Roumie's tone became more forceful. In fact, the consolidation of media is one of the most dangerous trends in modern journalism, and I've spoken about it extensively. Roumie paused and then delivered the final blow. Perhaps most troubling, Mr. Kurski, is your citation of the Thompson Report on Media Ethics, where you claim I stated that media transparency laws are optional. This statement is so far from anything I've ever supported that I'm genuinely concerned about how it made its way into your briefing. Kurski's face flushed red as Roumie continued. The First Amendment, along with all media laws, is not a suggestion. It is the foundation of free speech. To misrepresent such fundamental principles is not just unethical, it is dangerous. By now, the silence in the room was deafening. Roumie, with his reputation for truth and transparency, had completely dismantled Kurski's claims. None of the cases or quotes you mentioned exist, Mr. Kurski. You have presented this committee with fabricated citations that do not hold up to any standard of factual accuracy, Roumie said, his voice now carrying the full weight of authority. The room erupted into hushed whispers as the full magnitude of the situation became clear. Roumie's systematic dismantling of Kurski's false claims was not only an exposure of his lies, but a powerful reminder of the importance of honesty and transparency in media. The video of Roumie's methodical fact-checking was already going viral on social media, with viewers praising his calm yet devastating response. As the hearing concluded, Roumie's actions had effectively destroyed Kurski's credibility in the public eye. The young media mogul who had walked in confident and ready to manipulate the narrative was now facing the collapse of his carefully constructed media empire. Roumie, meanwhile, had cemented his position as a champion of truth in an era dominated by media spin. Several political commentators who had initially supported Jacek Kurski's aggressive stance on media control issued statements emphasizing the importance of factual accuracy and professional standards in public debates. For Jonathan Roumie, this exchange had an unexpected effect on his public profile. While public figures typically avoid direct media confrontations, his calm, methodical fact-checking was praised across the political spectrum as an example of professional competence and integrity. Media scholars noted that Roumie's response demonstrated the importance of expert knowledge and the value of rigorous research, while his patient but firm correction of Kurski's errors was cited as an example of how expertise should engage with misinformation, not through personal attacks, but through careful fact-based correction. The incident also highlighted Roumie's teaching skills, as many observers noted how effectively he had explained complex media ethics concepts to a general audience while dismantling Kurski's fabricated claims. The Roumie-Kurski exchange became a case study in several important trends in modern media discourse. First, it highlighted the dangers of public figures making claims about complex issues like media manipulation without proper expertise or fact-checking. Second, it demonstrated the power of expert knowledge when properly deployed. Roumie's years of experience in media advocacy allowed him to immediately identify and systematically dismantle false claims in a way that was both educational and devastating. Third, it showed how social media and instant fact-checking can quickly expose falsehoods, even in formal settings like public hearings. In the weeks following the exchange, several journalism schools began using the Roumie-Kurski confrontation as a teaching tool about the importance of accurate media citation and ethical practice in journalism. Media ethics courses incorporated it as an example of what not to do when engaging in public media discourse. For Kurski, the incident marked a significant turning point in his career. While he remained in his position as a media mogul, his credibility on media issues was permanently damaged. His subsequent interactions with the media were scrutinized much more carefully by both supporters and critics. The incident also led to increased scrutiny of research practices among political figure staff, with several news organizations beginning to fact-check legal and technical claims made by politicians, using the Roumie-Kurski exchange as an example of why such verification was necessary. Perhaps the most positive outcome of the exchange was its educational value. Jonathan Roumie's patient explanation of media ethics and citation practices provided a masterclass in media transparency and responsibility, watched by millions of Americans. Journalism professors reported increased interest in media law and ethics courses, with students citing the Roumie-Kurski exchange as an example of how expert knowledge could be effectively communicated to the public. The incident sparked broader conversations about the role of expertise in democratic discourse and the importance of factual accuracy in political debate. The hashtag Kurski School continued trending for days after the initial exchange, with new memes and commentary appearing regularly. The clip of Roumie calmly stating, "None of the sources you cited exist in any legitimate media database," became one of the most shared political videos of the year. The exchange was frequently cited as an example of why credentials and expertise still matter in public discourse, even in an era when political figures often dismiss institutional knowledge and professional training. The confrontation between Jonathan Roumie and Jacek Kurski ultimately became a powerful reminder that in matters of media ethics and public discourse, there is no substitute for rigorous training, careful preparation, and factual accuracy. While political theater and confident assertions might work in some contexts, they crumble quickly when confronted with genuine expertise and systematic fact-checking. Kurski's attempt to manipulate public opinion through fabricated media claims backfired spectacularly, while Roumie's calm, methodical response demonstrated why the media profession places such emphasis on accuracy, ethics, and responsible journalism. The viral nature of the exchange ensured that millions of Americans received an unexpected education in media ethics and transparency, while also witnessing a masterclass in how to respond to misinformation, not through personal attacks or political rhetoric, but through patient factual correction. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this breakdown as compelling as I did. It's clear that in the world of politics and media, accuracy and expertise should always be at the forefront of any discussion. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more in-depth analyses of political confrontations and media manipulations, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an update on the latest stories, debates, and fact checks. Your support helps me bring more content to you. See you in the next video.